I didn't know this world existed. I have been coming to the Jersey Shore for 70 years and never realized there was a richer world off the islands. This is a world where change has come slowly, and people who choose can live close to the land as their ancestors had for hundreds of years. With a hatchet in hand and an iPhone in their back pocket, they still manage to live simply.
I think a lot of people today have such a disconnect from nature, a disconnect from where food comes from. A lot of the early settlers, they lived on ducks and geese.
5 years ago, I stumbled into this simpler life when I went out to Goshen Farm to interview J.P. Hand for a documentary film. When Jamie invited me into the kitchen of his old farmhouse, I met his wife and fellow historian, Gwen Raring. They drew me into a world that appealed to my reverence for the past, a world I didn't know still existed. I met self-reliant men and women who know how to work with their hands and hearts. Together, we decided to visit some of these craftsmen, document their workshops, their work, and their thoughts. Our odyssey and the idea for our movie began at a get-together at Pete Peterson's place down on the eastern shore of Virginia, where we met carvers and collectors from up and down the East Coast. In our travels up north, we interviewed Bob White, George Strunk, Bob Biddle, David Rhodes, Harry Shores III, and J.P. Hand. Down on the eastern shore of Virginia, we met with Cameron McIntyre, Grayson Chesser, Kenny Marshall, Pete Peterson, and finally Jerry Taunton from coastal Carolina. Come with us and meet people who have dedicated their lives to the American folk art of decoy making.
This was art and hunting together. And the first art was basically sporting art in a way, because it was the cave paintings that early men were using to depict the animals they hunted and their experiences. And
too, that a decoy is like a symbol of the hunt, of the quarry. Like cavemen making all their, cave paintings, a tribute to nature. And it'll look good in the house, it'll look good in the water, or it works, and there are not many things like that.
It has been said that decoy making is a true American folk art. European settlers in America began hunting ducks, geese, and shorebirds in the early 1600s. Just when East Coast hunters began carving wooden decoys to attract waterfowl is unknown. But by the 1850s, contemporary newspaper accounts began to report the use of carved wooden decoys.
For generations, wooden decoys were used for one purpose only, and that was to attract wildfowl into a gunner's range. By the early 1900s, decoys started being looked at in a different light as a folk art that deserved to be collected, studied, and appreciated away from the marsh, away from the duck blind or the sneak bucks.
It was after World War I that decoys began to be collected and prized as folk art. Some working decoys that originally sold for a modest price are now selling for the price of a house. The old-time carvers would be astounded at the prices their tools can bring today. As a person who has spent a fair amount of time in my own wood shop, I was fascinated by the workshops that we visited. They were nearly all small, cramped, and richly cluttered, filled with the sounds of work and the smell of cedar shavings. To me, they are places of magic, littered with the evidence of past projects and filled with the awareness of future production.
Well, I'm just not comfortable working in a spotless environment like a hospital or a home. I'm afraid everything I do, I'm going to make a mess and get hollered at and get punched in the nose. But anyway, my ex-wife used to tell me that I love my filth, and she's probably right. Yeah, I don't worry about it. When the chips fly, just let them go. I don't worry about it. When I get overcome by them, it's like a tide, a high water tide of chips. Then I have to clean them up, make room for another batch.
You don't take an SAT test or go to art school to learn decoy making. This is an art passed down from father to son, from the old to the young, from master to apprentice.
Then my dad made decoys too. He was a house painter, but he made decoys in his spare time and sold them. So I guess that's how I got started.
So Dad told me one day, he gave me a little hatchet and said, we need some curlew decoys. Go down the beach and see if you can find a chunk of wood, driftwood, make something out of. So that's what I did. And chopped out about a half a dozen. It's all real rough,
Because the first bird I ever carved was a cardinal, and I did it when I was about 14 years old for my friend's grandmother. And I carved it from a piece of scrap wood with an old hunting knife. And she said, will you sell it to me? And she was kind of a poor lady, and I said, yes. I said, how much will you give me for it? She said, 65 cents. I said, here, because...
Well, when I lived at Fort Herman along the Elk River in Maryland, and my father was a hunter, but he worked a lot of Saturdays. And I knew he would let me take his decoys when I was 14 if he wasn't there. So when I was 13, I took one of his decoys to school where they had a bandsaw, and took some 2-inch pine and drew it around the head, cut the thing out on the bandsaw, and started working on the thing with knives and everything. And turned out not too bad, not too good. And then I made another one, then I started making bodies, and I've done it ever since.
Okay, well, I grew up on the Potomac River, and I could see the grown men hunting ducks as a schoolboy, and I said, that's what I want to do when I get older. And so I started chopping decoys out of wood from the beach and made 100 by the time I was old enough to drive a car, and it just never stopped.
Well, we're really back. I made my first one in 3rd grade as a project. It was a cork bird. I do remember it was cork. I remember it was a hen mallard. That's all I remember. Whatever happened to it, I don't know. But I was influenced by my brother. My brother was 10 years older. He carved, and a few guys in the neighborhood carved. So I advanced on to when I started hunting. Started 13 duck hunting. Had my own scull boat, making crude cork decoys. Heard of McLaughlin, but never really met him. And he was the name. He was a professional, what you could call semi-professional. You could pay $2, $3 to buy a bird off him to use. But never really met him, so I started getting better and better.
Most of the master carvers that we visited were still grateful for the old timers, the mentors who helped them along the way.
There's probably nobody who influenced me more than Nathan Cobb. Now, not so much the painting part, because his paint jobs were very, very simple. But if you look at them, they're very, very correct too. His decoys had so much motion, or I'll put it this way, they had the illusion of motion. And that's what makes them look so alive. And I mean, when you look at one of his Brandt, if you've looked at Brandt, you can tell exactly what that brant was doing. You know, maybe he's picking a piece of eelgrass that's floating on tide. You know, the way his head is, or maybe he's hissing at another brant that's gotten too close to him.
Met him at a decoy show in Salisbury, Maryland. We struck up a friendship. We both share an interest in old ways, old things, and I came up to go hunting with him and do some carving with him, and we've just been fast friends ever since. At the time, I was making what I would call a decorative decoy. They look like plastic decoys. And Jamie just couldn't understand it. Why somebody from an area that has such a rich decoy carving tradition would want to make decoys that look just like plastic decoys, and just like everybody else around the country and the world that's making decoys that look like plastic decoys. So you could say, if you wanted to be bold, that Jamie Hand, a guy from the southern shore of New Jersey, had a pretty big hand in revitalizing, breathing life back into the core sound style. Because everybody that I've taught and everybody that they've taught are a direct result, more or less, of Jamie Hand making me start carving a type of decoy that wasn't really being made anymore.
You know, been under the influence of so many carvers, the Ward brothers, old Corbin Reed, Madison Mitchell, Charlie Joyner, the Cobbs, and the Smith Island carvers, and the Hog Island carvers. Man, we just got a combination of it all.
Yes, about 47 years ago, I started carving on my own. I didn't have the money to buy decoys, and I needed decoys to hunt with. I taught myself initially, and after a year or two or three, I met Harry Shords, a local master carver from here in Cape May County. Later I met Hurley Conklin from Manahawkin, Ocean County, New Jersey. And as I like to say, Harry let me watch him. Hurley Conklin took me under his wing. And to this day, Hurley's influence can be seen in my work.
John English, to me, was the true, I don't know for sure, I can't prove it, but I think he was the true guy that started what we call traditional Delaware River decoys, which was a light, undersized, hollow, with a little carved tail or little carved wings, caricature of a duck, really. But his patterns, like Jamie's, are right on. The profile looks just like what it did. I mean, that's an old squaw. That guy could draw. You can make them fancier and you could put more into it, but it's hard to keep it simple and make it still nice. Simple is good.
We asked all of the carvers where they got their inspiration for their creations. And we found that inspiration comes from different sources and deep from within the artistic soul.
What inspires me is the things that I see when I'm hunting, mostly. You know, I mean, I watch birds all the time. I'm fascinated by them. There's not a day when I don't go by the ponds here on the farm and the embankments and look and see what's in there and see what they're doing and watch them.
I remember one time I was carving a eider. I was making a big drake eider, and I don't know why, but I'm sitting there, spoke shaving on this eider, and just out of the blue, I got this idea for a goose, a standing goose. And I mean, I had a pencil, I drew the goose right on the back of that eider I was working on, and then I just, took that eider out of the vise and threw it on the floor and went out and got a piece of wood and started on that goose, right then, just because I could just feel it,
See a bird, or you're going to go hunting and you want to make birds that you're going to hunt, like teal or black ducks, or if you're going after something special, you might want to. I always wanted to make a rig of eiders and go eider hunting, and I never have. So someday maybe.
Even to this day, I'm retired, don't need the money. I lay in bed sometimes. I'll get up 5 o'clock. She'll say, "Why'd you get up so early?" I'm out here drawing patterns, cutting the bird out. By 5 o'clock at night, it looks like something. It's ready to be sanded, put the eyes in, and next day I paint it. And I don't rest until I complete it. And I'm fascinated that I can do that. To this day, as many as I made, because I feel this way about, I never had no kids or nothing, but this is my legacy. These are my kids. Every bird I made is going to be treasured by somebody. They're not going to throw that away. The 6,000 pieces I made, they're not going to throw it. That's going to go on and move on. And I'm hoping that someday I'm going to go down. People are going to talk about me like I talk about English. Nothing better than him, but one of the guys that carried it on. Because
you get up in the middle of the night and you're thinking about something you want to do, and I've got to get up and write it down, and then I try to go back to sleep, and I can't sleep because I'm laying there working myself to death, thinking about this pattern or thinking about something I got to try. It's really enough to drive you mad, but it's also the greatest thing that's ever been. And I try to make something that can actually be gunned over, because life is way too short to hunt over plastic decoys. Also, there's already enough plastic in the ocean. Let's put some wood in there.
Decoy collectors were not there at the beginning, but without their interest over the last century, this American folk art may not have survived.
Up to now, I've probably got around 200 decoy, duck decoys, fish decoys, shorebirds, miniature decoys, and other assorted stuff that related to decoys, including the federal duck stamps, catalogues, auction catalogues, every book I can find, the whole lot. The house has been taken over by decoys and everything around decoys. And my wife has one shelf for cookery books, and but she doesn't mind. So,
This is my favorite decoy. It is a Jamie Hand mallard hen. It contains the ashes of my favorite dog, Sadie, who I hunted with for 12 years, died of cancer. I asked Jamie if he would make a hen mallard to put Sadie's ashes in. And after it was sealed up, Jamie said to make it extra special, he was going to have George Strunk paint it, which he did, and it's beautiful. The following October, I took this decoy out, threw it in the water with a weight, and we shot wood ducks over it. So it's very sentimental to me.
when I go into my decoy room, usually most evenings, I sit in there and look all around the shelves at the stuff that I bought and brought back from America. I occasionally get up, pick up a bird, look at it, turn it round. It just gives me a sense of peace.
I collect decoys because I love the craftsmanship, the workmanship. I grew up in a house. My parents had antiques. My mother had always told me, never have an antique you don't want your grandchildren climbing on. So the decoys that I buy have to be ones that I feel comfortable getting wet. If I can't throw them in the water and hunt over them, I'm really not that interested. On those days that there's no birds flying, at least I get to look at some beautiful decoys. Outside of the season, I put them on the mantle so it can remind me of next season and what to look forward to.
One thing that made this a particularly enjoyable project for me was the very real camaraderie we encountered and the welcome the Carvers offered us as we came into their workshops.
told the guys that guided with me, I said, treat these people just like they're your best friend who doesn't get to hunt very much, just like you would treat them. Yeah.
But it's the people you're involved with, who you're sharing a blind with, what dog you're sharing a blind with. I like knowing who carved the decoys.
While these master craftsmen spend much of their time working alone, they all share the desire to pass this craft on to a younger generation.
I've carved thousands of decoys over the years, and I'm proud of my body of work. Nothing fancy, just good gun and decoys, I like to think. But what even means more to me is the people that I've helped learn how to carve over the years. Just like Hurley Conklin and Harry Schwartz helped me when I started out. I take a special satisfaction in helping people learn how to carve, and I've helped in dozens of people over the years.
As far as passing this on, you know, the Wards were still alive, Miles Hancock was alive, and they were tickled to death to see a kid that was interested. All those guys helped me so much. You know, sometimes it would just be a little thing, but it would be something that would really help you. Cigar Daisy was the youngest one. I mean, they all could not have been nicer to me. And I know sometimes they didn't feel like fooling with a kid, but they all did. And, you know, so I always felt like, now how can I repay them? I did anything I could for them. But really, to me, the way you repay them is by passing that knowledge on. And, I mean, why would you want to keep any knowledge? I mean, when you're dead, you're dead. And why would you want to hold on to some little technique that you figured out that maybe nobody else has, although there are very few things that somebody else hasn't figured out. If you just ain't finding the guy who figured it out yet. I can't tell you how much it's meant to me to be able to pass what little bit I knew on to other people. And
I came to the end of our odyssey with a sense that we have been privileged to be in the presence of great and gracious folk artists who filled their lives in the world with joy and beauty. We recorded so much great footage and wisdom that we couldn't get it all into our documentary, but these last few clips just had to be included.
To me, this is not art, it's a craft, and I'm simply a craftsman working in wood. Not an artist. I get mad when people call me that, like I'm a hippie or, you know, a deadbeat kind of fellow. No, I'm just a craftsman. Instead of build houses, build chairs, or whatever, you know, build boats, building decoys.
And they were making decoys. He said, now decoys has only got to look like a duck to another duck. So that was a good quote.
As I like to say, if they outlaw duck hunting tomorrow, I'd still take my decoys out, throw them out in the water, and watch ducks land and swim around in them.
Pretty awesome when you take a group of decoys you've made and you put them out on the water, and all of a sudden you see birds lock right up and come into them. I mean, that is hard to beat.
If I sell a person a bird and they set it up on a mantle or a shelf or whatever in a room, and when they walk in the room, just catch a glimpse of that bird out of the corner of their eye and get just a moment of pleasure from it, then that makes me happy. I'm satisfied.
And when I draw my patterns, I can't draw one shot and it's done. I got to go over, erase, I got to go over. But eventually I get it. What in my eyes, what I think is right. I'm only a takeoff from the English family. John English was my idol. I just improved his, I think. Went up a couple steps. But as I told you before, I go up just so high, but in my eyes, if I go any higher, I could do fancier. They're not decoys. They don't look like decoys to me. So I get right under that. That puts me in another level if I go too high. I don't ever want to be put in that level. I just make decoys. I'm a decoy maker. You can call me an artist. You can call me what I've been called worse. But some people come in here and think I'm an artist. That's okay. I make decoys. Delaware River decoys.
What do you like about it particularly?
I don't know. It's just nothing really. It's just, you know, it's just
it's a pretty crappy
decent,
bird. You're just going to go
it's a pretty
shoot at
crappy
it.
Bird. Just I like it's a preener. It's a good hunting decoy. Pick it up easy. I don't know. Floats well. I was happy with the paint job.
Just got this idea to carve this wood duck and sat down and started chopping it out. My son was home from school for the summer, and you know, he was in here every day when I was working on it, and he'd come out, you know, the next day and say, hey, you know, how far did you get on the wood duck today? And I'd say, well, you know, come take a look. And he'd say, oh yeah, you know, I like that. And anyway, when I got it all done, he said, boy, Dad, you know, I really like this wood duck. He said, can you keep that one? I said, I don't think I can keep this one. You know, we got bills to pay. And but anyway, it kind of worked out. I sold some paintings I wasn't anticipating selling, and so I was able to keep it.
You know, I always tell people, I said, you know that Robert Frost poem, The Path Less Traveled, I think it is. You know, I said, most people work all their life to try to make enough money to do what they want to do. I always did what I wanted to do and tried to make enough money to live. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do it. You know, a lot of people can't. And if I don't see tomorrow morning, I've lived a blessed life, and it doesn't owe me anything. That's in the hunt club. My oldest granddaughter, she was sitting there when she was about 6. She looked up at that and said, Pa, that mermaid doesn't have a bra. And I said, well, actually, there's a story about that mermaid. I said, that's your grandmommy. I said, but I changed the hair color so nobody knew who it was. She said, well, Pa, grandmommy doesn't have a bra. I said, well, back then grandmommy didn't need a bra. And she said, well, Pa, you need to put some shells on grandmommy like Ariel has. So it was a place I used to hunt called Roman Rock, and I'll just see if I can remember all of it. I don't know. Pa carved a mermaid on the hunt club wall, swimming in the ocean, no bra at all. I thought she looked familiar, so I asked my pa. He said, it ain't a mermaid, it's your own grandma. 'Cause my grandmommy was a mermaid girl, swam in the ocean all over the world, till she stayed north 1 year too long, playing her and singing her mermaid song. Well, it started to rain and it started to freeze. Foot-long icicles hung from the trees when Pa started his boat that day and headed south towards Kickitank Bay. Well, when Pa first saw her, it was a terrible shock. She was sitting shivering on Roman rock. When he recovered from his shocking fright, he said, "Lord of mercy, what a lovely sight." He said, "I'm going to catch her, and I know I can, 'cause I'm a hunting and a trapping man." He checked the wind and checked the tide. He saw they were all on his side. He drifted up behind her and he grabbed her by the tail. She commenced to thrash and she started to wail. Well, he tied her up tight in his hunting coat and sailed her home in his gunning boat. For the whole first year she ate sardines, she wouldn't eat pork and she wouldn't eat beans. He taught her how to talk like the people do, and her tail disappeared and her pretty legs grew. He taught her how to hug and he taught her how to kiss. He didn't know love could be like this. He bought her some pretty store-bought clothes, and this is all secret and nobody knows, 'cause my grandmommy was a mermaid girl, swam in the ocean all over the world.
Wonderful.
The youngest one said, "Pa, was grandmommy really a mermaid?" And I said, "Well, you know, Pa's older. He gets confused, but I think she was."
That's great.